How do you really get to the heart of these huge global shifts without feeling, well, completely overwhelmed? If you follow world events, you know the feeling wading through articles, trying to connect the dots. It's a lot. And that's exactly why we're here. Today, we're diving deep into something absolutely central to what's happening now, the Quad. Yeah, the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. This deep dive, it's all about unpacking it, this really fascinating strategic group that's reshaping the Indo-Pacific. Our mission for you is to cut through the noise. We'll go way beyond the headlines, look at its surprising start, break down the latest big meeting, and peer into its, well, complicated future. We promise context, those aha moments, and maybe some surprising details you haven't heard. Okay, let's unpack this then. The Quad. Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. We're talking India, the US, Japan, and Australia. But the origin story, it's not what you might expect, is it? Not some grand military plan from day one.
Not at all, actually. That's a common misconception. It really grew out of something quite different humanitarian need. Think back to the 2004 tsunami. Absolutely devastating for Indonesia, India, Sri Lanka. These four countries, they came together quite spontaneously for humanitarian aid and disaster relief, HADR. And that cooperation, born from tragedy, sort of unexpectedly laid the foundation.
Wow, quite a shift. So from disaster relief, here's where it gets really interesting. How did Shinzo Abe's idea in 2007, his Asian Arc of Democracy, turn that into something, well, more formal?
Right, 2007 was pivotal. Abe's vision gave it that formal conceptual framework, linking democracies across the region.
Yeah.
But it hit roadblocks pretty fast. China reacted strongly, labeled it an Asian NATO.
Asian NATO, okay. That sounds like immediate pressure.
Oh, absolutely. And it worked to an extent. Australia actually pulled out temporarily in 2008, largely due to that pressure. So the whole thing basically went dormant, almost inactive for, what, nearly a decade?
A decade on ice. So what brought it back? The Renaissance in 2017, how did that happen?
It was a few things coming together. The Trump administration's foreign policy had a strong Indo-Pacific focus. And alongside that, you had India, Japan strengthening their own strategic ties. It just seemed like the time was right.
So they revived it. Where did that happen?
It was reactivated during an ASEAN meeting, actually. And then it got pulled into this broader Indo-Pacific strategy framework.
Okay, so fast forward to today. What does this actually mean on the ground? It's clearly moved beyond just, informal chats. We've got annual summits now, leaders meetings since 2021. That's a big step up. And the Malabar naval exercises, all four, are in on those now in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. That shows real operational stuff happening.
Definitely. And it translates into tangible results. Remember the Quad vaccine partnership during COVID?
That was huge. Millions of doses.
Exactly. And beyond that, there's ongoing work on critical tech, think 5G, AI, plus joint working groups tackling disaster management, climate change, real practical cooperation.
Which brings us right up to date. The Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, July 1st, 2025, in Washington, D.C. That felt significant. You had Marco Rubio for the U.S., S. Jaishankar from India, Penny Wong, Australia, and Takeshi Iwaya for Japan. Big names. What were the key announcements? What really stood out?
Okay, yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the announcements from this meeting are truly significant. Really telling. First off, they launched this Quad Critical Minerals Initiative.
Critical minerals, rare earths, that sort of thing.
Precisely. The stated goal is reducing dependence on China, diversifying supply chains for these minerals. It's a direct move to counter, potential economic pressure, price controls, the kind of supply chain disruptions we've seen. It's strategic.
Makes sense. What else?
Second big point. Maritime security, a real focus there. They agreed on ensuring free movement, freedom of navigation in the South China Sea and East China Sea. And crucially, they didn't mince words. They condemned China's, quote, dangerous activities, called out things like using water cannons, ramming incidents.
So getting more direct in their language.
Very direct. And they explicitly said the Quad is becoming a platform for action, not just talk. That's a key phrase. Action.
Okay, action platform. What else came out of D.C.?
Third, a strong, unified North Korea condemnation. Criticizing the missile tests, the nuclear program expansion. They also voiced concerns about external relationships, enabling Pyongyang's activities. Though they didn't name Russia specifically in the joint statement, the implication was clear.
Got it. And number 4.
Finally, a major push on defense and logistics cooperation. They're launching a new exercise, the Indo-Pacific Logistic Network. The idea is to develop shared air and sea resources, primarily for disaster management and humanitarian aid, but the defense implications are there too. Plus, specific mention of joint training for Coast Guards, maritime law enforcement. So integrating capabilities.
Okay, so lots of forward movement, lots of initiatives. But it's not all smooth sailing within the group itself, is it? There are always complexities.
Oh, absolutely not. Even close partners have, friction points. And that definitely applies to the Quad.
So what are some of those? You mentioned Penny Wong from Australia.
Right. Australia had some specific concerns they voiced. Minister Wong basically urged the U.S. to respect existing free trade deals rather than pushing for new ones. A clear message. And there's lingering anxiety in Canberra over the U.S. review of the IUCA's deal, a nuclear submarine pact with the U.K. and U.S. They felt they weren't getting concrete assurances.
Interesting. So IUC's creating some waves within the Quad dynamic too.
It seems so. It highlights how these different agreements and relationships interact, sometimes creating tension.
And is it just Australia? Or are there other sort of bilateral issues simmering?
No, it's broader. Both Japan and Australia have raised concerns about U.S. tariff policies, for instance. That's an ongoing issue. And, the perennial issue of pressure from the U.S. on allies to increase defense spending, that affects Quad members too.
It sounds like some of these things even cause delays, like IUCS talks.
Well, reports indicated that IUCS discussions and some U.S.-Japan defense talks were postponed for a time. It suggests these issues aren't trivial.
So this raises an important question. How do they actually manage these internal disagreements while trying to present a united front, especially towards China?
That's the balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
What seems clear, though, is despite these trade issues, AUKUS wrinkles, spending debates, all four countries came out of that Washington meeting reaffirming the essential need to work together in the Indo-Pacific.
So the bigger strategic picture still hold them together?
It appears so. The spirit of cooperation on the main goals persists, even with these bilateral frictions bubbling under the surface. They compartmentalize to some extent.
Okay, so looking ahead then, where does the Quad go from here? What does the future hold? Potential, pitfalls.
Right. Looking ahead, there are definitely clear possibilities and, well, some significant challenges too. It's a mixed bag.
Let's start with the potential. What could happen?
Well, one path is towards greater institutionalization. Could it become a more formal, permanent body? Maybe eventually something like NATO, although that's a huge leap.
More structure, basically.
Exactly. Then there's expansion. Talk about bringing in other countries, South Korea, maybe Vietnam, New Zealand, as observers, or even members down the line.
Widening the circle.
Mm-hmm. And technology leadership.
Right.
Really pushing collaborative innovation in AI, cyber, semiconductors, becoming a tech powerhouse bloc. Also potentially launching big infrastructure development projects as an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah.
Offering a different model for the region.
A Quad alternative to BRI. Interesting.
And finally, defense manufacturing, joint investment, maybe focusing on making India a major defense production hub for the group and beyond.
Okay, so a lot of potential upside, but you mentioned challenges. What are the big hurdles?
Well, number one is still China's steadfast opposition. Beijing sees the Quad as containment, calls it the Asian NATO, and continues to apply diplomatic and economic pressure against it. That won't go away.
That's the constant external pressure. What about internal?
The internal disagreements we just talked about. Trade tariffs, AU's fallout, defense spending, these frictions need constant management, or they could stall progress. Then there are the ASEAN countries' concerns. Many Southeast Asian nations are worried about getting caught in the middle of a US-China rivalry. They don't want regional tensions escalating because of the Quad.
They want stability, not confrontation lines drawn through their region.
Exactly. And lastly, let's be realistic, the financial burden. All these initiatives, tech collaboration, infrastructure, defense, they cost serious money. Sustaining the investment and commitment across all four nations is a real challenge.
Right. Ambition needs resources. So if we boil it all down, the big takeaway seems to be the Quad isn't just a talking shop anymore, not just a dialogue forum. It's clearly shifted gears, becoming more of a strategic alliance in practice, tackling real issues.
Absolutely. Its purpose is multifaceted now. Yes, balancing China's influence is a part of it, but it's also about upholding a rules-based order, promoting cooperation on tech, climate, health, security. It's broader than just defense.
It really has evolved. So the future really hinges on managing those internal differences while pursuing those shared goals. And maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to take away. As you watch this Quad dynamic unfold, how might it actually ripple outwards? How could it influence the global supply chains you rely on, or even shape the future?